thinking about who to get for our speaker for this conference, first we were trying to find someone who was a maverick. And then we looked for somebody who would give us change, and we couldn't get either of those people. Instead, we got one of the finest voices in network news radio, who we hear every morning, and we have heard every morning for about 30 years. Our guest today is Doug Limerick, who is from Shelby, North Carolina, where he started his career at WOHS Radio. He's also worked here in Charlotte at WBT, and he's worked in Birmingham, Boston. He was in the Air Force. He was a Russian linguist. And he has been at ABC, as I said, for about 30 years, where he's won 2 Edward R. Murrow Awards, where he wakes up people every morning, where everyone from the President of the United States, I dare say, is probably listening to you, to every member of Congress and everyone else in Washington, D.C. We're happy to have him, and he is our speaker for today. So, Doug, without anything more.
Thank you, Rich.
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Good
I hope you got a good night's sleep. If you stay in the hotel, the Doubletree over here, you may not have gotten too much sleep. It was like, I thought Cirque du Soleil was over here in this tent. Or Led Zeppelin or somebody. Rich, thank you so much. You know, Rich Landsberg is one of the true professionals who have made the transition from the newsroom to the classroom. He's imparting his wealth of knowledge and vast experience to the next generation of broadcast journalists. Bottom line, Rich is a fantastic newsman and teacher. Rich, I cannot read your writing. You have it done.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry. He teaches my daughter and Elon, and she loves him. He's a communications professor, he's a tremendous professor at Elon, and I couldn't resist getting that little dig in there. I talked to some of the Elon students last weekend, as a matter of fact. I said, going down to talk to the RTNDA, and I've been with the RTNDA many, many years. BT here, 4 years, my great stations, tremendous, my home station was. And I talked to them, I said, how are your speakers have been in the past? I said, some have been a little bland, a little long. So I'm bland, or I'm not long. Please stand up and say, you're bland, or you're long. And I was on the plane coming down yesterday. This woman said to me, so we had a nice conversation. I said, I'm making a speech, but you know, I really don't have a real grabber on it. She said, well, inject humor. Everybody likes humor. So I said, what can I do? Talk about the bloopers I've made on the air in the past years. Some I could say and repeat, some I couldn't, to this group. And then I was back in the hotel room and last night, and I called my wife back in D.C. and I said, honey, what's going on up there? She's got a house full of kids, Elon students, that they're doing a documentary this weekend, including my daughter, including your students. And she said, well, nothing's going on. We have got the regular mail, bills and everything. Got a call from your doctor. I said, oh, yeah. Call from the doctor. She says, yeah, well, it's kind of weird. I said, well, I called 3 days ago to the doc, and I said, I tried to get through it. Of course, I got voicemail. You know, you get 15 selections. Left on his voicemail, I said, Dr. Rex, I said, I need help. I said, I've been getting up 7 or 8 times, 4 or 5, 6 times a night. We won't go there. But I said, you know, that affects older men like me frequently. I said, I got to have help. I got to have somebody to help me here. I need something. And so the person called back, my wife, and she said, she had sort of a strange accent. And she said, is Mr. Limerick there? I said, no, he's not here. She says, well, has he had an MRI, a brain scan? My wife says, I don't think so. What's this for? He says, well, he wanted a reference to a neurologist. And my wife says, no, it's urologist. She says, it's not his head that's having a problem. You know? But as Rich said, this is like coming home for me because I am from Shelby and grew up there. It used to be a big deal for us in high school to come to Charlotte. Charlotte was really something, and go to the open kitchen. And to work at WBT years later was a real thrill for me for 4.5 years. Then I went to Boston, moved to Washington in 1979, and with a local station, news director, and then I've been at the network since '82. So let me just simply say, radio is dead. Everybody's watching television. Radio's done. Kaput. No future in radio news. Jobs are being lost daily. Lousy pay. Terrible hours. Radio is doomed. That's what a consultant told me in 1971. You'd think with our economic times that we're living through right now, it'd be the case right now. But I'm still doing what I do, despite iPods and Blackberries and Sirius radio and satellite radio. I get up at 3 o'clock in the morning every morning, 5 days a week, as many of you do. You know how the hours are in this business. Come to work, drive to Washington, down there at 4 o'clock, read in, start writing. I was lucky enough to sit in with Rich last weekend, or it was last Saturday, I think, his broadcast writing class, and teaching these young kids, freshmen and sophomores, I think, how to write. Writing is the key to everything I do. Writing is the key to my delivery. It determines my delivery. And I think, by the way, be honest now, which one of you, how many of you have heard me on the air? 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, thank you. I don't know if I'm heard here in the Charlotte area. I'm heard in Hickory and Raleigh and Durham and Wilmington, places like that. But I've been doing it for a long, long, long time. And the more I go, the more I realize I don't know. But the key to my job is creativity, to be conversational on the air. I had the privilege for 5 years to sub to Paul Hardy. I don't know how many of you young kids know who Paul Hardy is. Do you? Have you ever heard of Paul Hardy? You've never heard of Paul Hardy? Paul is 90. No, don't feel bad. Paul is 90 years old. He's been on the air for 60 years. He's out of Chicago. He does commentary and news. He's had a tough year. He's been sick. His wife died. His wife Angel died at night. But he's an institution. And he does feature news primarily. He can use, this is why it's called news and commentary. He can comment on what he's talking about. I've tried to incorporate some of that into my hard news, into my writing, so that I can relate to the listener, the average person out there. When I talk to the mic, as many of you do, and when you're on television, those of you on TV, you relate one-on-one with the person who's viewing you or listening to you. Paul has been an inspiration to me. I was talking to him about 2 weeks ago, and I was saying, how you doing? He's doing his show twice a week now. He's trying to get back. His son's doing the morning show. His son, by the way, that show that 8:30 is heard on 2,000 radio stations around the country is by far the most listened to radio program in the nation, and has been for many, many, many years. Of course, he was making $10 million a year. ABC was paying that until this big economic problem arose. But here we are, as Rich noted, 2 weeks, just over 2 weeks to the election. If I hear, I approve this message one more time, I am going to scream, I think. We really, I mean, this is a very interesting election, to say the least. I'm not sure how close it'll be. People keep asking me, they say, what do you think, who do you think's going to win? And I say, well, it's hard to say. As a newsman, I really can't say. I said, I'm supposed to be totally unbiased, and we all have our biases personally, but on the air, it's a pet peeve of mine. For God's sakes, don't let your personal leanings or philosophies trend over into your error in your work. It's so important right now. Feelings are running high, emotions are running very high, although night before last, I don't know how many of you saw the Al Smith dinner. I think that really, really, really was a wonderful thing, because the vitriol that's been evident in the last 2 or 3 weeks, some of the attack ads, I think they've worked against McCain, actually. But it's going to be very interesting to see what happens 2 weeks from next Tuesday. People, I'm looking forward to, in a way, because, you know, Washington is so populated, and there's so much traffic, there's so many people. I'm really looking forward to fewer people, because a lot of people I talk to say, if McCain's elected, I'm moving out of the country. And then other people say, if Obama's elected, I'm moving out of the country. So we're going to have some depopulation, and I'm really happy. I mean, I'm looking forward to that. So we'll see what happens. The president, of course, whoever it is going to have one hell of a mess on his hands. An $11 trillion debt over the last 3 weeks. It's just been unbelievable. ABC News has had a hiring freeze for the last 3 or 4 months. that's, I'm sure all of you involved in the business have heard firsthand. Possible layoffs, we have a job after the election. I heard a fellow who works at ABC Television in New York the other day said, we anticipate major layoffs after the election. We'll see what happens. Broadcasters, of course, depend on advertising, and advertisers have cut back unless you count. You ever watch the evening news and count the number of medical ads on all the pills with the side effects? Don't take this, causes death, stroke, paralysis, lack of breath, things like this, unbelievable. And all the ED ads. And it's embarrassing sometimes when you've got somebody younger there, you got all these ED ads, and you have the, what's the slogan he says, when the moment's right, make sure you're ready. And it always ends with a scene of the two bathtubs out overlooking a cliff, overlooking the ocean, you know, who's gonna drag two bathtubs out? And they're stroking each other's arms, you know? Come on, it's embarrassing, these things. But that's what we're seeing. We're seeing medical ads, car ads, and after that, we don't see a lot, you know? So advertising has really been hard hit, and this is gonna be a tough winter. The next 4 or 5 or 6 months are really gonna be tough in our business because advertising is gonna be down. And no matter what you do as far as news is concerned, the bottom line is you've got to make money. The station's got to make money. You've got to stay afloat. You've got to stay on the air. So we're all going to be affected by that in the coming months. And I mentioned here coverage of the candidates. Now I know Fox is fair and balanced, Ken, but for the rest of us, it's supposed to be a joke. The rest of us need to constantly be on our toes and make sure we all do our best to get equal, unbiased coverage to both Senators Obama and McCain. We have ABC News Radio in Washington. I'm the only anchor in Washington. Everybody else is in New York. So I have to go to New York quite often, but I told them years ago I wasn't going to live in New York, and that's the way it is. I've been lucky enough to be able to stay there. We have Ann Compton's our White House correspondent. I don't know if you've heard of Ann Compton. She's a former television correspondent. She's an excellent, excellent reporter. She's never home. She's always with Bush. Dick Ratner is, it's hard to believe he's nearly 70. Dick Ratner is one of our radio reporters. He's a fabulous reporter. He's our Capitol Hill correspondent, and he's one of the best reporters I've ever met. Jim Hickey is in New York, and he's a tremendous reporter. We're blessed, not only with the older reporters there, but Eric Tursky, Alex Stone are younger reporters and correspondents, and they're really extremely talented, bright. But you've got to remember, if you're going to go into this business, guys, you may, at the drop of a hat, be called to Idaho or Mexico or tsunami or tornado or anything else. It's an incredible business. You've got to be able to make sacrifices. And you've got to keep your bags packed too, because as we all know, firing is not such a great stigma in the broadcast business, because most of us have been fired. I've been lucky. I have not been fired yet, but my contract runs out at the end of December, so we'll see what happens. Despite all the problems and the pitfalls of the business, ours is a fabulous profession. I was just talking to some of the Elon kids earlier about 9/11. I happened to be on the air that morning. By 9 o'clock, we had our television monitors on, the sound turned down, and I was on the air. It was all ad-lib that morning, I remember. Ann Compton was with Bush down in Florida, and she was at Bush. The Air Force One had been sent out west. They were afraid that we were under attack. And I remember watching the towers, one tower burn, and the other plane flew in about 9:03 that morning, and I was on the air. I looked up, and at first, I was still talking, and at first it hit me like, I thought it was a video of the first plane. But then when it turned out, I said, my God, both towers have been hit. So I won the Murrow Award for that, as a matter of fact. It's very important to keep your cool as best you can in those situations, in times of incredible duress. The Challenger blows up, the shuttle. When the shuttle blew up over Daytona Beach, I just happened to be in Daytona Beach on vacation. And we went outside to listen to the sonic boom, and no sonic boom. Went inside, turned the TV on, and the Columbia had blown apart in the atmosphere. And I jumped in the car. My wife says, we're going to St. Augustine. I said, I'm sorry, dear. But I got in the car, drove like mad down to Cape Kennedy, to the Kennedy Space Center, and covered that all day long for ABC Radio. I don't get out that much to report. We used to go to the conventions a lot, but they cut back on convention coverage. Look at TV, 1 hour of primetime coverage a night. All I can tell you is be fair, be accurate, be creative, learn as much as you can digitally. It's tough for us old guys. Not that we resist change, but we do. I resisted going from a manual to an electric typewriter, then from electric to an electronic typewriter, then to the computer 10 years ago. Computers are wonderful, internet's great, but I still have a hell of a time. And when there's a bulletin, I want to pull the page out and run in there. I've been doing it a long time. I still enjoy it. I get a bit jaded sometimes, but when something breaks, I really want to cover it. And I hope you have that zest for news too, because it sets you apart. It's not. I talk to my daughter sometimes about that, and I say, sure, it has lousy hours, and the pay is not always very good, especially in smaller markets. You have to pay your dues. A lot of younger people don't realize that. They want to start out at the top. But the rewards of this business are such that it's just a wonderful, different, challenging business. And it's been so good to me, and I'm sure it will be to you too. Which brings me to a video called The Tapes of Wrath. How many of you have ever seen The Tapes of Wrath? 1, 2, 3, 4. Every year, we have the radio and TV correspondents dinner, black tie dinner in Washington at the Hilton Hotel, 2,000 people there. And every year, the person who's in charge of one of the networks, the entertainment, has Don Imus, Andy Rooney, Garrison Keillor, people like that. But sometimes somebody does something different. And this is very dated. I debated it myself. I said, should I really show this? But if you've never seen it, it's very dated. It's over 20 years old. President Reagan, the president's always at this dinner. President Reagan was sitting there, and he was a piece of work anyway. So he was sitting there watching this. We had television monitors all over the room. He got a kick out of it. The quality is not very good because it's been transferred from VHS to DVD. But I thought I'd show it. So I give you, before questions, I give you The Tapes of Wrath. I think it has some lessons to keep our egos in check. Who starts this? How do we start this? I don't know anything about high tech. Start it. Enjoy it. I hope you, if you need to, get back a little higher if you can't see it right. Here we go. There's some lessons to be learned there. For one, always assume that a microphone is open. If you ever see the Royal Lipizzan Stallions, be sure to keep your sharp eye for that on the dais there. And be careful how you tell somebody you're number 1. Now, it's time to, I hope you enjoyed that. It's terribly dated, but it's so funny. Some parts of it are really, will live on forever.
We have some time for some questions. First, let's thank Doug for his speech.
We have some time for questions. I hadn't seen that in a while, and it's always wonderful. A couple things I picked up there, which I didn't remember, was I think there are so many of us who are in the newsroom who think the skiing squirrel is something new.
Right.
And that's that's almost 30 years old now. 25 years old, yeah. So the skiing squirrel, and also for those of you who are younger than the video, and there probably are some here, that was done tape to tape. It's not digital. That was before we had the ones and zeros in the editing. So that was pretty darn difficult to put together.
A lot of work.
And there's some really interesting people you saw in there. So Jessica Savage, who had a
she's gone.
Tragic career. I just died a couple weeks ago.
A lot of people gone. A lot of politicians gone. Tip O'Neill.
But it's amazing, as many as those who are gone, what's amazing is how many we saw who are still here.
Right.
Bob Schieffer. Who else did we see? We saw Dan Rather.
Young Dan Rather. Everybody a lot younger, but Sam Donaldson is still as feisty as ever. He's semi-retired, but he's still got that ego. It's a piece of work.